You're about to learn how to create a bulletproof trading system that, if used correctly, will eradicate all of your losses, skyrocket your P&L, and completely change the game for you and your trading. These may seem like bold claims, but believe me, watch this video, put these frameworks in place, and see for yourself. We start things off with a mind map, which then progresses into a high-level mechanical process in a flashcard style, where you have to pass through certain levels to either advance to completion, where you take the trade, or fail to do so and skip the trade. I call this process gatekeeping, as each of these levels act as gates, and this is an exercise that you run through before every trade you take, keeping you well out of the losers and firmly in the winners. To kick things off, we need to start with the raw basics: the what, the where, and the how. So simply take a pen and paper and write down what you want to see, where you want to see it, and how you want to see it. Then we need to put together slightly different systems for different conditions. For me, I have a regular system that I operate 70 to 80% of the time, and a breakout or trending system that I operate for 20 to 30% of the time. Then we need to get into pro trend versus counter trend, an area that most overlook to their detriment. When honing in on this, we're not spinning up new systems per se, but we will have to take a look and adjust our risk parameters. So for me, it's something like this. Let's start by taking a look at my regular system. The what? Divergences and delta. The where? Sweeping key highs or lows, or tapping into supply and demand. And the how? Ideally as fast and sharp as possible. For the breakout system, it's an entirely different process, as it's a completely different system. As for the what, it closes past the breakout level on the time frame that you drew the level. As for the where, it's the level itself. So these are horizontal or diagonal levels with 3 nicely spaced out touch points. As for the how, it's most importantly consolidation. Then I also like to see RSI resets. For horizontal levels, ideally ascending lows, and for diagonal levels, mandatory ascending lows. This is, of course, an illustration based on breakouts to the upside. For downward breakouts, i.e. breakdowns, it's the reverse. Next, we'll have to go through our trading journals, but don't worry if you don't have one quite yet. If you do, then simply spend a good bit of time reading through your journals and picking out your main flaws and weaknesses. This could be over managing your trades. It could be taking too much size and too tight a stop. It could simply be taking subpar setups perhaps, or whatever these look like for you, just write these down. These are going to be critical for your gatekeeping process and will make sure that you never take these trades again. If you don't have a journal, that's fine, but I do suggest you start now, as journaling is critical to your growth as a trader. But for now, you can simply take a pen and paper and guess your weaknesses. Finally, I want you to acknowledge what your A-star trades look like. Again, if you have a journal, this is useful, as you can just scan back and look at your most successful trades. If you don't, then it's simply an exercise of scanning back through the charts and plucking out what you think would be your best A-star setups. Once you have all these bits in place, it's time to put everything down in a mind map in as much detail as possible. What this process does is lay down a framework which we're going to use later to keep all of your emotions out of your trading, making your approach to the markets fully logical, rational, and data-driven. So I'm just going to run through my mind map quickly so you can see in full detail what yours should end up looking like. Of course, it won't be one-to-one, as we'll have entirely different systems, but it should end up looking something like this. First, we either break off into the regular system or the breakout system. This is the first question we have to ask ourselves before taking a trade, as of course it will lead us down completely different paths with entirely different execution styles. Let's go down the route of the regular system for now. As I said, this is my main system and I operate this 70 to 80% of the time. The first gate or question I ask myself is this trade based on a sweep, supply or demand, or a deviation? These are the areas in the chart at which I want to be operating in and doing business in. So I have to make sure I'm doing so, I'm staying in check and not just taking a trade outside of these criteria, just just because it feels right. Next, I need a divergence to form across the RSI and the awesome oscillator. So I simply ask myself, is there a divergence present on the RSI and the AO? Next, I get into the business of pro trend versus counter trend. And there are 4 potential paths here pertaining to the markets that I trade. But of course, when putting this together for yourself, make them applicable to the markets that you trade. So for me, this is broken down into the first being pro trend, BTC or ETH. The second, counter trend or neutral, BTC or ETH. The third, pro trend altcoins. Or the fourth, counter trend altcoins. Then we get into more granular detail. Let's take a trip down the counter trend or neutral path for BTC and ETH to see some examples. And so we meet our first gate. Do we have extreme speed prior to the divergence forming? You can see this is a mandatory gate for this trade type, as we're counter trend and thus we need more stringency in place. This gate is also present, as you can see, in the counter trend altcoin path, but not present for either of the pro trend options. Again, this is just to maintain and make sure that we have higher levels of stringency and criteria in place when we're trying to fade a trending market, as opposed to align with it. Next, do we have very strong delta confluence? Again, this gate will be present in other paths, but as you can see here in the pro trend route for BTC and ETH, the wording is slightly different. Instead, it's do you have reasonable delta confluence? And as I don't use delta when trading altcoins, there is no delta gate on either of the altcoin paths. Next, we have a time frame based gate, as one of my main weaknesses that was cropping up in my journal was going too low a time frame. In this path, it's just making sure that I'm taking a trigger on the hourly time frame and above. And this is the same in the pro trend altcoin path. But for others, such as the pro trend BTC or ETH path, you can see it's 30 minutes. And the counter trend altcoin path is set to nothing under the 2 hour. From here, the 4 paths meet. And the first question is this trade truly an A-star setup? At this point, we take some good time and compare and contrast the current trade setup to all of the other screenshots you put together of your other A-star setups. You have to be completely honest with yourself here. This process will bring you success in the markets, but only and only if you give it the respect it deserves. The next gate is the trade clear in terms of first hitch or first trouble area? Again, just one of my flaws that kept cropping up in my journals. From here, the next gate is, have you waited for the appropriate candle trigger? Again, just another weakness of mine that I jump the gun before the candle closed and take a premature entry. Now, at this point, I'm sure you're seeing the value of putting together that body of information as to your weaknesses. My next gate is your stop loss placed as wide as possible whilst being reasonable? Another classic trader's pitfall. And finally, one last bottleneck to ensure I'm being honest with myself. Are you 100% honoring your system? This may seem useless, but remember, this process is meant to keep you out of the bad trades and only take the good ones. These gates are critical. From here, I want you to put together a risk table. These will be different if you have different systems, such as for me, regular and breakouts. Here's an example of my risk table for the regular system. The first column is time, and then the other 4 columns simply refer to the 4 paths we were looking at earlier, designating specific risk for each path on each time frame. Now, if you've got this far, you've done all the hard work, so well done. It's time to turn all of your hard work into a bulletproof trading process. So head over to typeform.com and sign up for free. Click Start from Scratch. From here, you have to take all of your gates from your Mindmap process and input them into this system. They'll either be yes or no options or multiple choice. So click Add Content up here in the top left and start inputting all of your gates. If your gates were yes or no options, then select yes or no. If they were multiple choice options, then select multiple choice. Once they're all inputted, you have to go into workflow. up here. And in this area, you just want to make sure that they're all linked up as they were in your mind map. So once they're all linked up and in the same order, you just want to pop your risk table at the end of this process. Eventually, you'll end up with something looking like this. And now you can use this gatekeeping process before every trade you take, simply by pressing the play button up here. From now on, you'll undergo a full systematic and mechanical flashcard process, which will tell you bluntly whether you're allowed to take the trade or not. No more emotional trading, no more greed, no more FOMO, just a rigorous bulletproof system for you to adhere to. And basically, as time goes on, you'll come in here and adjust your workflow. At any point, you can slip in a new weakness or a new flaw. This then becomes an evolving space, which, if honored and respected, will keep you out of all your losers and only in your winners. So now that you've put this system together, you've come leaps and bounds. But to truly master trading, you still have to focus on your trading psychology. So I've put together this video which details how I completely reversed my losing streak by focusing on my mind. A video I imagine you'll extract some great lessons and takeaways from. I'll link it up here. So get stuck in and soak it all up.